It is still morning. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Danielle Wilson. I'm actually based out of Denver, Colorado, originally from Kansas City, so still consider my part of the Midwest user group, but Senior Director of Channels West at Mixed Mode. Here today to talk to you about multi-cloud environments, cloud transformation, going to these environments, the risks versus what we've standardly dealt with on-prem environments versus these multi-cloud environments, and just some recommendations and thoughts of how we move forward with the fun times ahead. Personally, love making my presentations interactive. So if there's ever any questions, comments you want to throw in, throw at me, throw at each other, feel free to during the presentation. But you'll see it also kind of dictates towards some open discussion toward the end. So no question's a bad one. Feel free to throw at me whatever you want. So kind of kicking off, as I mentioned, the conversation's really going around cloud transformation, how we protect our environments out there. Some of the major concerns executives such as CISOs are seeing just based on conversations and how we're going about these today and why these questions are being asked. I feel like most people in this room, most practitioners understand there's a world of difference between on-prem where we had one exit, one entry and threats, more or less, right? But with these cloud environments now, AWS, any of these multi-clouds right now, there's multiple points of exit entry, there's multiple points of threat vectors there. It's very nebulous. It's no one knows what the enter out is. And some of these top questions that we're starting to see just as vendors out there is what data exists across my environment, across my cloud environments right there. There's just a lot of shadow data assets out there, a lot of legacy storage, idle assets that haven't been used lately. We all know that a typical CISO anymore, their average tenure is 18 months. And it's kind of a CYA policy while they're there, right? Sometimes you don't want to know what was hidden before you came in place. You're not necessarily considering what's coming in after, but it's that tenure that you're there for. So those shadow data assets of really not knowing what's there. I've had many conversations with a lot of CISOs out there. You would be amazed from the business perspective side of how many people think they operate in one cloud. I only have AWS in my environment. Start looking at it. Most enterprises and SMBs have at least 2+ clouds out there, whether it's a AWS and a small GCP, a Databricks, there's a lot out there for that. Another conversation that's coming up is who's using our most critical data out there too. Data misuse, it's a huge one. Phishing attempts, DDoS attacks, email spam out there, compliance breaches. Another thing we find, there's so much data that's just OTW, open to the world out there, that they're thinking was not, and I mean, creates huge compliance risks, whether it's HIPAA, GBLA, any of these compliance SOCs out there, when companies aren't realizing where their data is at, because again, they have no idea how to look for it out there. And then how can we stop sensitive data from being exfiltrated? Data exfiltration happens all the time. You got a rogue employee, an ex-employee out there, ransomware attacks. How do we predict when this is going to happen? How do we know this is going to happen? And how do we remediate this in a tight time frame there too? And the concern with the cloud data is because this is what the hackers and the threats are coming after. Because why? The cloud data stores, that's what has the monetary value for these companies. Why would you go for something else? So everyone's trying to attack this data, and there's just so much of the data out there. We've got different types of data. We're seeing that 40% of cloud resources right now are data assets. That's a lot of stores and a lot of information for hackers to come out of. And our problem is when we're looking at the PaaS assets, the managed assets, the S3 buckets, the IaaS assets, the virtual machines, your MongoDBs, your VMware instances coming up, and even the DBaaS out there, the Snowflake and the Databricks, because I don't want to pay for all this money on my other cloud. So I'm just going to segregate it out to everywhere. How can a human really handle all that? 20+ types of data assets per enterprise. CISOs don't know where their information's at. this is where kind of the AI is kind of coming in there, because AI, again, and we'll get into this in a little bit later too, it can be predictive, it's self-learning right there, and it eliminates the human mistake. When we're dealing with this much, you could be the most intelligent human out there. You can't handle all this type of data out there, and it's becoming remedial. There's different activities that the humans can be doing in these environments to really make a difference, rather than just trying to self-train, accidentally mistake, accidentally misconfigure, accidentally miscategorize something out there. So really with this is avoiding bias is the key to a successful cloud transformation, in my opinion, and some other people's opinions too. I know AI is kind of a tricky word right now, and it's very overused. It's becoming another acronym almost, but let's talk about it for a second, because when we're having human interaction and with all the XDRs, NDRs, DDR, every DR out there, we're still coming out with that human interaction right there. For example, you look at those top three, the rules, the training data, out-of-date IOCs on there. The rules, they go in, but sometimes never come out. So what's that do for you? It's a good rule. Are they even correct? Who put those rules in place? Do you have turnover on your teams right now to where you're not even knowing why that rule was created, where that rule resides, if the information for that rule is still imperative for your organization? And then we look at stale privileges and vendors. That's another big one right there. Again, especially with turnover, so many third parties come into organizations right now. Have privileges been turned off? Have they been turned on? Are they correct? Are they able to access the appropriate information? Are they accessing information that they shouldn't be accessing there too? And then misconfigurations. I mean, that one kind of speaks for itself right there and kind of falls into others. I'm yet to find an environment that has always been perfectly configured. I'm sure everybody else feels about the same way here. So with that, again, talking about all the acronyms here, the biggest problem, we can call it what we want. We can call them SIMs, XDRs, NDRs, everything out there. But really the biggest problem is we're hearing a lot of noise. Companies are dealing with a volume of data. We're trying to focus on tool consolidation and control costs. We're wasting time with the human interactions where humans can be doing great jobs. It's just with this data, it's too much. 426 hours a week in false positives. And then we're still getting with 80% of CISOs still can't figure out where some of their data is at. I'd rather be doing something else. So it really brings it to AI. And some of you guys in the room may be old enough, such as myself, to remember Mad Magazine, and they always said spy versus spy in those. Well, now it's kind of like the AI versus AI is a great way of looking at things. Bad actors are using AI. You got to be able to combat it at the same level. The bad guys have weaponized AI. Now, what I've done previously is I've even had some jokes with some of my colleagues about this too, and say, you can't really just speak about AI without context in there. I'm sure some of you guys too were at RSA over the last couple of weeks. Everyone's talking about AI, but AI without context doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's just another XDR, NDR, DDR type of terminology right there. But with AI, what you do, you can see the speed, scale, and savings that you'll see in your environments. Now, talking about AI, I'm sure some of you guys are aware too, AI waves, there's 1, 2, and 3, all is recognized and defined by DARPA. Wave 1 AI is going to be the simplest. It's expert systems, not to dumb it down, but think of something like TurboTax, but you got to start somewhere with it. You put your information in, it can do simple calculations for you, it spits out a result. Wave 2, statistical learning, a little bit smarter right there. Uses training networks, neural networks to label things. For example, if a neural network looks at dogs and cats, it can say that's a dog, that's a cat. If it sees a zebra, it's still going to define it as a dog or a cat. It doesn't have that extra level of intelligence. It has intelligence that was fit onto it from training data. So it has to have the knowledge already there to be able to explain. Now, wave 3 is where it gets really interesting. This contextual reasoning, looking at real world phenomena right there, takes into consider the context of the situation. For example, the time of the week, the time of day, the day of the week, who the conversation's with, how long this conversation happened to, who the conversation was about. So there's 4 attributes that really make third wave AI different than the others. It's self-learning, predictive model, it's contextual, and it can be abstract on there too. Today, for third wave AI from a commercial perspective, mixed mode is the only one by DARPA that's able to deliver this to customers. Now, kind of going back to it all, because the reason I wanted to bring AI into this whole cloud transformation one, because of the scale, because of the speed and the cost savings, and to allow people to do what they were trained to do and do something interesting instead of just diving through a bunch of data right there. Whether you're on the AI bandwagon or not, you know, that's a conversation, but this is what I ask you to look at when you're looking at cloud transformations moving forward too. Does it rely on clustering, labeling, or people? Because you're adding bias into your project right there. How do you know your cloud infrastructure is what you expect it to if you are not the one that put all that information in there and you can't be positive on it? Is it based on historical data? And is that historical data right? Are you smarter than the bad actors that can change the data around? You might have had insider threats. Have you been able to confirm that these are not affecting us? Who trains, tunes, and maintains your cloud infrastructure? Do you keep appropriate records? Are you guys even sure that how it's set up right now is your most secure environment? Is the cloud data dependent on rules? What if those rules are off? What kind of misconfigurations or gaps is that providing into your security infrastructure? And number 5, how are those novel attacks handled? Again, with AI, what it's doing, it's self-learning those environments, cloud or on-prem, but we're not going to talk about on-prem today. It can start predicting when this is going to happen. This is something that unfortunately we're just not capable always of doing as humans on a constant basis. How are novel attacks handled? So with that, I know I kind of spoke a little fast. I wanted to be cognizant of time and kind of keep us back up, but we've got 10 minutes. I do want to open it up to questions, thoughts. What's everybody think about AI, third wave AI, or are your organizations, are you guys dealing a lot with cloud transformation now? Do you see these issues? Because one of the things I like to do when I'm having these talks is get feedback from everybody in the room too. Understand what you guys are seeing. Am I way off? Do I not know what I'm talking about? Comments?
Cost. That's my comment. Cost of, I mean, yes, AI, but the cost of AI. You're looking at this.
Cost can be prohibitive at times, but then you're kind of comparing your cost of a breach versus the cost of maintaining the AI infrastructure on here. I will also make comments that I know that, for example, AWS is doing a very good job with their AI vendors and customers out there trying to curb some of these costs down, especially from having to run instances and environments, just kind of those cloud costs, if you will. But I do understand where AI technology can be expensive, but when looking at the cost of the humans right there, as well as the potential breach, it can be very counterintuitive on there as well. Yeah.
I mean, AI can be used for a lot of tasks that we're doing right now. A lot of people are doing tasks, and we can change that with AI. But it does require a lot of work and a lot of knowledge too. OpenAI has their API, where you can write code that basically does certain tasks. I experimented with this a little bit. One of the observations is that it's still a little bit early, but we cannot know exactly how far we can take this.
Right.
So an example of that, it is in handling, for example. You can actually have an AI-assisted system that will go through your logs and then derive conclusions from that. The problem with it is the limitations with OpenAI, that's one. And the second thing is the data privacy. If you're in AWS and then you're sending data to OpenAI, that might be an issue. But now we have Bedrock from AWS.
Right.
I don't know if you have seen something.
So that's going to be when we went to the slide of kind of looking at this too, and the different versions of AI there, 1, 2, and 3. What you're describing right there is very much on the wave 2 AI, which is 99% of what you're seeing out there right now. It's when you're hearing AI and all these, it's mainly always going to be wave 2. And that's because it doesn't have that self-learning and that predictive nature yet. So yeah, like the chat GPTs out there, the open APIs, those would fall under wave 2. And that's where there's that bit of a learning curve that it still needs to go through. So wave 3, I mean, I think wave 3 is going to be hitting the commercial space pretty hard over the next 12 months. And then, you know, they conceptualize about wave 4 coming out in the 2030s out there, where it's a little more Terminator-ish.
I'm gonna go cry now, thank you.
No, we don't want you to cry. You know, I think the wave 3.
Have you watched those movies?
I grew up on those movies. Linda was my hero back then. Come on. So, you know, I think that brings up a good point, because I mean, I read the news all the time too. I think there's good or bad, but you know, if we stop looking at it and stop developing what we do on our end, it's going to get a heck of a lot scarier out there. Any other questions from anyone? Well, hopefully this was helpful. Just kind of wanted to provide an, you know, intro onto those cloud transformations. You know, why I think AI is imperative, at least third wave AI is imperative in these transformations to make them more secure. I know I'd rather not have all my personal information floating out there open to the world everywhere. And, you know, and some of the, even though it all probably is already, but yeah, no, I just want to say thank you guys, and happy to jump into any deeper conversations or theories about AI you guys would want to. I'll be around all afternoon. So thank you.